Hey guys, welcome back to another album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the two new Demon Hunter albums that came out a few days ago, War and Peace. Now, I have an interesting history with this band. I got into them about 2 years ago when their album Outlive came out, and this was received interestingly, to say the least. There's a lot of mixed opinions. For the most part, I enjoyed Outlive when it came out. That was kind of what got me into the band. I ended up just falling in love with their 8 album at the time discography. Just to clarify, a lot of the time when I was doing album reviews, that was about 2 years ago, and my rating system has changed a lot since then. I used to give albums pretty high scores that they honestly did not deserve. My rating system now tends to average out at my generally good score being a 7 out of 10, 8 being great, 6 being decent. My updated scores for their albums are here. I want to show them because I want people to know that I really do like a lot of their albums. I think they've made several great albums and they've only had a couple low points in their career. So I definitely thought that Demon Hunter was a very unique band. While they were influenced by heavier acts, they also had this strong core sense of melody. That's where this band ends up having low points, is when they get a bit lazy, they don't put as much effort. I'm sorry the sun is being weird today. They don't put as much effort into their melodies. That's when they falter. And for War and Peace, I gotta say, first off, just a little spoiler, each of these albums are better than Outlive and The World is a Thorn. But do they live up to their older material? We have to see. We have to find out. So with that, I'm going to be talking about these albums in a different way. So I put up this poll on YouTube. The results weren't that useful. I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna review both albums in one video since they came out at the same time. They're meant to be listened to together. I'm going to discuss some themes that occur on both albums. I'm going to be discussing that in the War review. But I'm trying to move away from doing track-by-track album reviews, so I'm going to format this a little bit differently. I'm going to talk more about pros and cons. And so with that, let's move on to my more general review, which will be for the album War, which was supposed to be the heavy album. Peace is supposed to be the soft album. The first thing I noticed about War as an album, as a progression from their earlier material, is Ryan's scream. Ryan Clark, the vocalist of this band, has always kind of had this growly, they were more yelled and just didn't have too much tone to it. And for the most part, that was the band's downfall. It's what I don't care for about the band. I think one of the weakest links is Ryan Clark screaming, but here he tries a different approach. He definitely shows progression from Outlive, and I think on Outlive a lot of the issue with that album was Ryan Clark's vocals sounding very tired and old and just not into it at all. But here he sounds a bit more invested, and that's a big pro for both of these albums, even in his clean singing, which has always been a little bit plain to me, not gonna lie. He doesn't have many embellishing qualities in his voice, he doesn't have any vibrato, but at the same time his tone is naturally really good, and so I can give it a pass. He is a good singer, and a lot of the time in War, both his cleans and his screams sound pretty decent. His screams are a little higher pitched than normal, and because of that, it gives War a little bit of a rougher edge, which I think it was going for, with Cut to Fit being the opening track. An example of Ryan Clark's screams being different is evident here more than on anywhere else, I think. Because as soon as the song opens up, we get a verse with screaming in it, and then in the chorus there's this very clean singing that Ryan Clark is doing, and then there's the background screaming vocals. It's an interesting kind of dynamic. The thing that is strange about Cut to Fit is the clean sounding guitars. I do feel like it tried to be heavy, but like there was not enough low end in the guitars and there wasn't enough bite to really pull that off, so it just kind of sounds like it doesn't try as hard as it should. There's not enough effort put into trying to make this sound heavy, and this is a theme we'll see throughout War as an album. Because this is supposed to be the heavy album, yet it's probably about as heavy as Extremist, if that. And Extremist was seen as a soft album at the time by the fan base. Going on to the first single, this is the second track, On My Side, and this demonstrates the baritone clean vocals that Ryan is known for. What I mentioned before about Ryan's vocals, it kind of hurts this track. It makes it sound a bit plain, and the double bass going throughout the song. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the instruments. In general, On My Side is probably one of my least favorite songs. I wasn't impressed with it at all when it came out as a single. Another thing I want to mention about Ryan's vocals, on the song Close Enough, he has a nice moment, like 2 or 3 times I think he does this in the song, where he goes for these A4s and his upper register in his clean voice is strikingly clear, and he nails those notes. He puts a lot of effort into it because you can tell Ryan's getting older. The quality of his voice there is pretty good. And so I think that was a highlight on that song. Moving past the vocals, we get into the instruments on War. And again, cleaner than they should have been. There wasn't enough grit or distortion in these guitars whatsoever to pull off what they said they were going to do. Really, the only couple songs where the instruments are gritty and heavy are on Close Enough and on 3 tracks I will be talking about as a group later in the review. But for right now, I need to mention something else about Close Enough. The chorus melody is pretty cool, but I need to mention something about it that I can't let go. And it's a weird resemblance between 2 songs that are nothing alike. I'm wondering if anybody else notices the similarity in melodies between these 2 songs. Side note, does anybody else think Grimes actually puts out pretty decent to good material? Or is it just me? But there is a similarity there and I couldn't help but notice it. Now I need to talk about the heavy material. So, the songs that actually cross over into metal here are The Negative, Ash, and No Place For You Here. And they're all in a row in the track listing, so I'm going to talk about them in order. Starting with The Negative. This sounds incredibly Slipknot inspired, not just in the title because of Slipknot having the song The Negative One. In the sound all the way through, a lot of the riffs sound like they could have come off of the Grey Chapter. Very, very close to Slipknot sound. And this is nothing new for Demon Hunter. They've always channeled Slipknot very heavily. Yeah, just see the latest and the last from Summer of Darkness and Left Behind by Slipknot from Iowa. Almost identical riffs. And this Slipknot inspiration definitely shows up in the main riff because it's pretty crunchy, but at the same time the way it's mixed kind of ruins that a little bit. There's a lot of treble in the guitars, and I think there could have been more bass to kind of have more of that low end, more of that support that it needed. And the chorus melody can get a little bit redundant. At the same time, the riffs are creative. They do take quite a bit of skill, and there's a nice pace to them. And so overall, as much as I'm criticizing The Negative, it's kind of one of the better moments here. And I don't know if that's just the Slipknot fan in me coming out, or if I just like it on its own, but either way, yeah, it is one of the better moments on the album. Then we get into Ash, and this is the other heavy track I want to talk about. This is a shorter song, and there isn't too much to say about it other than it definitely tries hard to accomplish what like Crucifix did on True Defiance, but it doesn't quite get there. It doesn't quite stick the landing all the way. There's one thing that keeps me from fully taking this song seriously, and I have to point it out, so here we go. And I'm sorry, I just had to point out that it sounds like that's what they're saying, and wow, they need to pronounce their SH sounds better. But ultimately, there's not much to say about Ash whatsoever. Moving on to No Place For You Here, I definitely think this is the weakest out of the 3 heavy songs in a row. It gets a little repetitive. There are cool moments in the song. There's nice guitar work throughout this song. It's not the worst thing ever, not the best thing ever either. And now I have to mention another instrumental progression. So, in general, the bass had more presence on War than it did on any of their other albums. And in the song Leave Me Alone, that is a perfect example of the bass really driving forward the main riff. And I really like the tone it has there. They chose a great tone for the bass. It sounds pretty wonderful. It's a shame that Leave Me Alone is a little bit of a plain song all the way through, but the riff in that song is pretty great. And in Cut to Fit, there's also some nice bass-driven moments, especially in the bridge. I guess the only other thing is that, yeah, the double bass is a little bit abused here, but overall, drums are pretty solid. Guitar work could be a little heavier sounding, and then the bass work sounded pretty good. So that pretty much wraps up the instrumentals of War. Now I want to talk a little bit about the last song in specific, which is Lesser Gods. And this is a song that has a lot of range to it. in the sense that the verse is one of the softest moments on War, and then the chorus is one of the heaviest moments in any of their albums, actually. It's really menacing, and it came out of nowhere in a good way. I think it's probably the best moment here, and it's fitting that it's a closing track, so for that, War does get points for me. Now, before I wrap up the review for War, I want to get into a little section of lyrics. So, I want to discuss a little bit of the song Gray Matter, which was kind of a middle-of-the-road, mid-tempo, mid-rocker, whatever song. And the lyrics in general for Demon Hunter tend to be very bold Christian lyrics. In the song Gray Matter, though, it communicates that in an interesting way. I'm a Christian, so like, I'm not entirely opposed to Demon Hunter's lyrics in general. I do think they've written pretty great lyrics in the past, like I Will Fail You always gets me. But here, because I don't think it's all black and white, and I guess that's how it is for them, it's just something I don't quite agree with. Another lyrical aspect of Demon Hunter is the confidence in their Christianity, which is shown in On My Side when the chorus line goes, "Where's the enemy when death is on my side?" And it's a nice sentiment. I actually like that sentiment quite a bit. So, War, as an album, showed a progression from Outlive somewhat. I think there were lazy moments here. There were songs I didn't really discuss much because they didn't really do anything for me. The experience averaged out to be pretty decent, and with Lesser Gods being so good, I want to bump this score up a little bit, but the rest of the album being a bit forgettable, the highest score I can really give this is a very, very strong 5 out of 10. And it kind of pains me to say that. And now, I'll be going on to the album Peace. I will be talking about every single song, at least briefly. Maybe not in order, but in groups. I was prepared to give this a pretty negative review, but as I listened to it a few more times, there were songs, especially near the end of the album, that really clicked for me. The second half of the album is pretty surprising. So with that, I do want to get into the cons first, because these were things I was prepared to talk about when I first listened to the album. And the cons in Peace. Sometimes with Demon Hunter's softer ballads, there's a lack of intricacies laced throughout the song. I really appreciate when bands incorporate a lot of harmonies and a lot of interesting mixing choices and like panning and all of that. And Demon Hunter is a band that doesn't quite understand that, I feel like. They just kind of go bare bones. They just put in the minimum effort to make ballads sometimes. I really do think a lot of their gems are ballads. It's just that nowadays, with the band aging and everything, they just don't put that effort in. That is the main con in the album Peace overall, is the lack of effort. And a lot of the time, chord progressions and melodies do work well. They're good at that. But there isn't enough emotion or uniqueness to really sell the song and make it stick for me. I say that the songs that really demonstrate this the most are More Than Bones, I Don't Believe You, the title track, and Time Only Takes. Those were probably my least favorites on the album, especially the title track. Oof, that was rough. More Than Bones, I want to discuss a little bit. That was a single, and it's in the key of F sharp minor. They do this key well, as they do in I Will Fail You, which is one of my favorite songs by them. And the pleasant key of the song and the pleasant tone of it is the main redeeming factor here. It sounds a little bit generic, but at the same time it's like pleasant sounding. I don't know if that makes any sense. I Don't Believe You, I want to discuss briefly as well, has a blatant cop-out chorus because there's Ryan going, "I don't believe you, no." And then like the no at the end of the chorus is just a general cop-out move, and it's just so boring. Its main crime is being boring. I think I should move on to some of the better songs. I should move on to the pros of this album, because don't get me wrong, there are good songs and there are a lot of pros on this album. For the pros, the song that intrigued me a lot was the song When the Devil Come, and yes, it's called When the Devil Come. Demon Hunter's not known for their grammar, apparently. I can't. Getting into the song, it sounds like a very eerie, country-tinged song that could be in an old western movie. With that vibe, with that atmosphere, it's also in the key of D minor, which is my favorite key. Musically wise, this song has a lot of strengths, and it's mostly in the dark, quiet atmosphere. And the pace is much quicker in this song as well, more than most of the other songs, and I was complaining about the slow pace, so here, this song kind of fixes that problem for me. There's only one thing that I really don't like about this song, and that is when Ryan sings that refrain, when he sings the title of the song, I keep imagining in my head, as a musician, I want to add harmonies to that. I want to add like really eerie sounding harmonies that are just kind of in the background and they're super haunting, but like there's none of that. There's no vocal harmonies. Like, they could have done so much with that. They could have just gone crazy with the vocal layering and they could have made it sound so intricate, but like they just didn't. And that's something that kind of bugs me about this song. It just didn't reach its full potential. Like, it could have been amazing, but it ended up just being good instead of amazing. It's still good, so I guess I can't complain too much. Another good song was Bet My Life. This has a very fast pace to it, considering most of the other songs, and it just sounds bouncy. It sounds upbeat and fun. Wow, a Demon Hunter song is fun nowadays. What a shock. But yeah, it is one of the better songs for that. It's really funny because something that I really like about Bet My Life is the synths. Like, I don't like most of the synths on Peace, especially on the title track. I don't think they work very well, but the synths in Bet My Life are pretty fun. They just loop around the main rhythm and they just sound so intriguing after the first chorus, you know? It's just such a jam, like, it's such a bop. It's such a bop. And now moving on to the closing track, Fear Is Not My Guide. This is a piano ballad. They don't do piano ballads very often. I'm trying to think of other piano ballads they've done. Demon Hunter's definitely done The Tide Began to Rise. That was kind of a nice soft piano ballad from the Triptych, 2005. It's been a long time. And so with Fear Is Not My Guide, there's not much going on whatsoever. It's very stripped down, it's very minimalistic, and you pretty much just have piano and vocals, like, for the most part. However, the production actually sounds pretty amazing. The effects on the vocals, they sound perfect. Like, they actually sound pretty amazing. And it makes me wonder why the rest of Peace wasn't this well produced. Like, the piano just has a good tone to it, Ryan Clark's voice has a good tone to it. It just sounds pretty great. But overall, yeah, this is one of the better moments here. It's a good song. Again, not great, but it is a good song. And so, with that, talking about the good songs and the bad songs, let's move on to a great song. My favorite song on these two projects, Recuse Myself. And my dumbass thought it said Rescue Myself for like 3 days, so I'm really glad I didn't film this review earlier, because I would have said Rescue. So, oops. But anyway, this song is pretty experimental production overall, with the choir vocals and the stomping rhythm being kind of offset by an incredibly soft verse. And it's very moving. There's a lot of emotion in the way the verse is constructed. The synths and piano that back up the chorus work pretty well. There's just this droning kind of synth going on. And Ryan Clark actually sounds like he gives a crap, which is nice. Another good element to this song. The combination of these dynamics give this song a lot of personality, a lot of dimension, a lot of range, and it's something that Lesser Gods also had. So Recuse Myself and Lesser Gods are probably the best songs on these projects, I have to say. And so as for my overall thoughts, I just gotta say, at this point, Demon Hunter has gotten a bit lazy and they've gotten a bit run-of-the-mill. And it's kind of alarming to me that in 2019, Poppy sounds more like Demon Hunter than Demon Hunter does. I'm sorry, I had to mention that. When I heard that Poppy song, it sounds just like Demon Hunter. I can't. Peace did surprise me a little bit. About half of it was pretty crap, but half of it was pretty good. So the good outweighs the bad. Therefore, it gets a decent 6 out of 10. Which means I like Peace better than War. That's weird. I liked War better than Peace on the first 2 or 3 listens. I do think Peace is a superior album because it has more experimentation, and when Demon Hunter steps out of their comfort zone, they usually succeed. Usually. Whenever they take risks, they usually succeed. When they do the same thing over and over and they want to make the same generic mid-tempo Christian rock song over and over, that's when they fail. So overall, these albums, yeah, I'm pretty mixed on them. I'm mixed on both of them, and I think Peace is slightly better than War, not by a whole lot. Those are my final scores. I guess that averages out a strong 5 and a decent 6. Averages out to be a light 6 out of 10. For both albums. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I also want to hear, did you prefer War or Peace? and I know I've heard both sides before, and they're both pretty valid because I think these albums are relatively close in quality. Also, I want to hear what you think of this review. It's been a while since I've done like an actual album review, except for Ammo by Bring Me the Horizon, and that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to start trying to format my reviews a little bit differently, and I want to hear what you think about this new format. And if you have any tips for me on my performance, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.